Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about avoidances in finances. That's a really big thinker because, if you really think about it, you can think about all the times you avoided talking about money, trying to spend money. Oh, the list can really go on. So, luckily for me, I have Adam here who's going to help us think about this and hopefully shine a light into this dark topic that people are probably avoiding.
Mhm.
So, Adam, thank you for coming on my show. Let's dive right in. I have to ask you, when you hear the word finances, what does that make you think about?
Oh, wow. My specialty is helping people who hate dealing with their finances. And so, yeah, some heaviness comes to mind, actually, to be honest. It, that is often what's there for people. Not always, but especially when we first start working together. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it. I could only imagine just the process to get to get somebody to that point to even just consult with somebody who understands money, because I'm going into school for accounting and
Mm.
so for me this is interesting and that's why I'm really happy to have you on my show because man,
Mm.
people really hate talking about money. People don't like to deal with
Mm.
money. And I realize that people will pay for convenience.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a
Mm.
big hinder on savings and just overall someone's finances?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes that convenience is really helpful and worth it. It depends. And sometimes it's just like a almost like a laziness or a
Yeah.
it's an extra $5 or $10, but I don't feel like going out. And I mean, it really depends on one's finances. Like $5 or $10 for plenty of people doesn't matter, but for other people that does matter and it adds up. So yeah, I
It
don't
just
have a blanket
depends.
answer on that. Yeah.
I know, because I guess it's very specific depending on the person's
Yeah.
budget, person's
Right.
finances, and what they consider to be convenient. Because what
Right.
may be a necessity for one may be just a convenience for another. And
Yeah.
I first heard this that saying, well, you're paying for convenience when I went to a convenience store and a guy was complaining because their prices were so marked up compared to just the regular grocery store. And the guy in the back, all he said was, well, you're paying for convenience. You don't have
Mhm.
to shop here. You can go over there, but you're shopping here. So if you're
Right.
shopping here and you don't want to go far, well, you're gonna pay for it. And ever
Right.
since then, it's stuck to me. And it
Mhm.
makes me realize, that's when a lot of people get called under cheap. So what is your opinion on the word cheap person? What does that make you think
Mm.
about?
It's a great question. Well, I tend to be I prefer frugal. I tend to be super frugal myself.
Oh, okay.
It's not necessarily what I counsel my
Okay.
clients with, because there are definitely drawbacks to it. There are ways that it's really challenging for me at times to spend money. And so, like we were just talking about convenience, sometimes it's a good stretch for me to spend money when I don't have to, because of my particular tendency. So, and I try not to be cheap with, and cheap there. When I think of cheap, that's like, tipping or with
Okay.
friends or like there's that kind of stinginess.
Yeah, yeah. There's always
Uh,
levels to it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How about you? Do you want to answer any of these too? I'm curious what are your
I'm not
associations with
attacking you. I'm not attacking you.
yeah,
I know you feel a little off put, like, oh my goodness, now
yeah.
I feel some type of way.
Yeah,
I promise you, I did not discover your life and be like, let me poke at
yeah,
Adam. No,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no, that's not it. I think I am a cheap person. But then again, I don't consider myself cheap at the same time. You know what I mean? Like I believe in savings. I believe that there's a certain amount of money that you should spend, but you should budget it. You should always have some type of plan, always be aware of what you have to pay. You know what I mean? And be considerate of that. And if that means that you can't go out to the movies or go buy an outfit, then that's something that I'm willing to do so that I can meet my goals, or I can make sure that
Yeah.
my main essentials are paid. So that's in my frame of mind, but it's because I've seen reckless spending. You know what I mean? Growing up, I've seen people just recklessly spend, not care, not have a savings account. And I felt the repercussions from that. You know what I mean? I felt those effects. So because of that, I'm like, one, I don't want that on my children. And two, I don't want that for myself. So for
Mm.
me, I will always make sure that I have a roof over my head, my bills are paid, and those are my main essentials. So I
Mm.
guess I'm cheap if it comes to breaking away from my bills and from my things, but I'm not cheap to make sure that that's taken care of first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I think I'm getting like you're really intentional with your spending.
Yes.
It's the
Yes.
opposite of recklessness. You're thinking carefully and strategically about like, okay, what's most important, and
Hmm.
and how do we make sure what's most important is handled, and then all of the other nice things kind of fit in or they don't based on the most important things. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Nice.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
just made it pretty.
Yeah. And it makes sense you're going into accounting given that it's like okay, let's be strategic. Let's like account for every penny.
Everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I like to catch patterns. I like to see
Mhm.
patterns in my spending and in just in life in general. So I think
Mm.
that's why it's a nice avenue I'm going into, that's something different. But
Mhm.
so in your opinion, why do you think people avoid saving? You know what I mean?
Mm.
I know we kind of dabbled on the topic just right now with my
Yeah.
life, but in
Yeah.
your opinion and from what you experience, what are your thoughts on
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, yeah. Why do people avoid saving? There's so many things that we want. Our our American culture is so set up to stoke desire and to stimulate desire, and we just have all these things that we want for ourselves, for our lives, for our kids, whatever. And saving, I mean, of course, depends on the person, but that's not always a priority, or it's not, or sometimes it's kind of it's the back of the line. And so it's like, okay, there are all the bills, there are all the things I want. And like, if there's some left over, then I'll save.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of other people who are barely making it. Their income and expenses are like pretty close, and saving feels like a luxury. Um,
Yeah, that's true. That's a nice way to put it. Savings feels like a luxury because sometimes it does feel like that. Like
mhm,
it's hard to really budget it out. And I know a lot of people may be thinking, well, maybe you just have a high spending amount, you know what I mean? Or your cost of living is way more than what it should be. You should be living in your means. I've heard that a lot. What do you
mhm,
say for those type of people who feel strongly about, oh, just living in your means and
mhm,
in that manner?
mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm an unusual financial professional. I think there's something about shoulds that are really harmful, that
Mm,
really get in the way of people getting really clear what they really want. Now, of course, savings are generally a really good thing in most cases, but for, everyone knows that they should save. This is not a surprise to anyone. And so, but just telling someone they should save, or they should, their income should be higher than their expenses or whatever, it doesn't move the needle because they
yeah.
want stuff. And so I think when someone authentically wants to save for retirement, for emergency funds, whatever it is, when that becomes a like, oh, I gotta have that, that's really different from like, oh, I should do that, but really I want this thing.
Yeah, no, you gotta weigh it out. So how do you necessarily deal with clients
Yeah.
then? Because it seems like you're realistic. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It seems like you're very realistic. You understand that
Yeah.
everything's very subjective. You know what I mean? It really is. We live in a world where it's very subjective because my needs and your needs are going to be different. My income and your income are going to be different.
Hmm.
Our situations are going to be pulling us in different directions. So how do you, in a general sense, how do you like consult clients to
Hmm.
even hire you?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a financial coach. And as a coach, my priority is helping people really figure out what they want. A story comes to mind. I had a client who was making pretty good money. She was making about six figures, but she had a lifestyle where, she was living in the Bay Area, as I do, which is a really expensive place to live. And her spending was consistently above her expenses. Did I say
Okay.
that right? Her expenses were above her income. And she was regularly pulling from her retirement in order to just fund her lifestyle. And she knew something was off, which is why she hired me. And a big part of our work was just figuring out what the heck is happening and just helping her get clear on her numbers.
Okay.
And so she got clear on how much over she was tending to be each month and in each category. Like she kind of sobered up with like, okay, what is going on here? And then once she had a lot more clarity about the numbers, um, we had some just honest conversations about like what does she really want here? Because she was really reluctant to make some changes. She didn't want to stop doing what she was doing, living in the really nice apartment she was in, doing the travel, etc. And so, and yet, of course, she was very uncomfortable noticing she was just pulling from her retirement over and over again. And
Yeah.
so, what we were doing was we were just holding the tension of like, I don't want to be draining my retirement, but I don't want to make changes.
Yeah.
And there's no right answer to that. It's like she could drain it all the way down, like, and then she would probably have a different desire. And so I just kind of held that with her in the question of like, it's your life, it's your money. Like, what
Yeah.
would you like to do?
Yeah, that's a reality that a lot of people really need to ask themselves. What do
Yeah.
you really want to do?
Yeah,
What really
exactly.
matters? And I think that's
Exactly.
why I feel like I'm just so very intentional when it comes with my monies because
Mhm.
I've realized that like we are
Mm.
so in the moment, you know what I mean? So in the moment, like the now, just now, whatever feeling comes up right now, you need to just act on it. And I'm trying
Yeah.
to step away from that. You know what I mean? I'm
Mhm.
trying to
Mhm.
live differently and get away from that impulsiveness because I feel like that
Yeah.
impulsiveness is very dangerous with your money. You know, because
Mhm.
if that woman did not make six figures, she would
Mhm.
not be living anywhere. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? She would not be
Right.
living anywhere. And the proof in the juice in that is all these people living in tents or who are homeless. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
And you as a financial coach, when did you realize for you in your life that
Mhm.
your finances needed to change?
Mm.
Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. Well, when did I realize they needed to change? Well, I've been doing this full time for 8 years,
Okay.
and I've always been good at what you were talking about being intentional, about being thoughtful, not being impulsive. And um, and the challenge for me has been more on the income side
Okay.
in making more than what I need so that I
Okay.
can save, like we were just talking about. So,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's really just in the last year that that has, started to become started to feel more urgent. Like, all right, I'm in my 40s. Like, it's time for me to be making more than just getting by.
yeah.
Uh, And so I'm in the middle of that process of just figuring out what does that mean and how do I do that? Uh,
Yeah, and where does that stand for you? Is it a title or is it an actual position? You know, is it, you know what I mean? Would you feel better doing less for more or more for less? You know what I mean? Like it's hard to say because you're in your 40s and you know you're striving for more, but then at the same time you want to get comfortable because you're 40s and you've already done your hard nitty-gritty in
right.
your 20s and your 30s, you know? So it's just people don't realize that as you age, you start to see money differently. You know what I
Mm,
mean? In my opinion, that's how I see it. Like, because every
yeah.
year that I get older, I start to have more respect for money. You know what I mean? I start
Mm,
to challenge my viewpoint on money because I know I know because of what I've seen growing up, it hinders me, at the same time. So I don't want it to hinder me where it becomes my whole focus, but it's like you have to be realistic. And that's why I'm kind of really enjoying this conversation because you seem like a very realistic individual.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we need more people to be realistic. So how did you become realistic in your mind? I mean, if
Right.
you don't mind sharing your story.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I just tend to be pretty grounded and direct, and I love clarity. I guess I'll say that. I
Okay.
love clarity. I love helping other people get clear, and this is just a place where people there's a lot of anxiety because it matters so much.
Yeah.
And because nobody gets trained in this stuff, we don't talk about it.
That's
And yet somehow we think we should just know what we're doing because we're adults. Where did that come from? But we all seem to have this expectation. This took me years to figure out, like that we should know what we're doing just because we're an adult. That's crazy.
You know what I realize is I think the reason why we have this automatic placement of just being adult, having all the answers, is because
Yeah.
when you're a child, your parent used to always tell you, trust me because I'm an adult, or because I said so because I'm an adult. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you're
Right.
always supposed to trust the adults to just know everything,
Uh-huh.
despite of them not knowing and them just figuring it out along the way. Because now we're adults and now I'm a parent and now I'm realizing like
Yeah.
they really did not know
Yeah.
anything and they were really just winging it every single day
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing is winging it every single day. So it
Yeah.
really is interesting to think about. So I guess to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
topic a little
That's
bit
good.
and get to know you a little bit more, what is your pet peeve? Like in this entire world, what is Adam's pet peeve?
Pet peeve. Wow. Such a big question.
You got this. I believe in you.
Yeah. Okay, one that comes to mind is fees and interest and and like because of what I do, I'm non-judgmental about it. And but sometimes I'll just kind of raise an eyebrow and be like, wow, do you see the interest on that? Like, and it's like because like with credit cards in particular, like they don't make the interest rate obvious. You got to dig for that. And so it's like the fee is just kind of built into the state. Like it's never like, hey, you are paying this much extra just because you're not paying off your balance. And so because I love helping people get clarity, like I just want them to see that and then people make their own choices. But it's like we just our culture has become more and more like, oh, just swipe your card, swipe your palm, like don't think about it. Like you want this
Yeah.
thing, right? Just do it.
Yeah.
And and what I see is like there's more and more of this like underground rumbling of anxiety of like, I don't know if I have it. I don't know if this is a good idea, but I'm just gonna get it.
Hmm.
And it's I love helping people kind of take a step back and get overview on their finances. Like, okay, how am I doing? Like what does my spending tend to be every month? And in each of the categories, like just getting more clarity. And then from that place, then that anxiety can kind of simmer down. It's like, okay, I've looked, I know I'm okay. I know I need to make changes over here. And that's where I think peace can come from.
I think you're in a great position. You know what I mean? Just because you are realistic, as we keep on saying in this conversation, but everything that you just said makes sense because
Mhm.
you are writing the clarity, you're being realistic, and you're finding the things that people are avoiding. Like people
Mhm.
are avoiding the fees, people are avoiding the interest, people are avoiding everything. I'm still avoiding to call Spectrum to lower my bill because it went
Yeah.
up and I'm like irritated that it went up. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
avoiding that conversation and you are helping people who avoid those hard things that aren't really hard. I feel like we make them up in our
Right.
mind to be harder than what they need to be. Am I right? Is that, I mean,
Yeah.
or does it seem like that or how do you see it?
Yeah. I think there's truth in that. You know, things get just built up in our mind. Like
Built up in our minds. That's very true.
when when you just do it, like it usually doesn't take that long. Like calling Spectrum, like it won't take that long. But I imagine what you're avoiding is the discomfort. Like that's kind of an uncomfortable thing to say. Is like, hey, dude, what the hell? Like, why'd you raise my rate? Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what you're avoiding exactly, but that can be uncomfortable.
No, I think you hit it on the pin. It's the discomfort of just having that conversation, of
Yeah.
just having somebody look it over, and then just possibly being like, "Oh, that's all we can do." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do for you. You either just close your account or choose to take away certain things in your package, but
Mhm.
that's all that they can really do. And I think that's the disappointing, is just hearing no, or just hearing they
Mhm.
can't help you. Because when you come across that, it hurts your heart a little bit. You know what I mean? Because you have high expectations that someone's willing to help you in your finances, or someone's willing to help you lower this bill that seems to
Yeah.
go up more and more every month, especially with electricity and water and gas. I mean, those are bills, and calling those companies is a headache in itself. So when you said discomfort, I'm like, man, that sits heavy in my heart, because it's true. It
Mhm.
all comes down to discomfort.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's a
Yeah.
really good point. Really good point. So,
I,
what is your guilty pleasure? Like, what is that guilty pleasure for you that you spend on? That no matter
yeah.
what, it's in your budget. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Doesn't
I'll
count
answer
for
that.
rent, doesn't count for anything else, but you know what I
Yeah, I
mean.
I just have one more thought about the discomfort, and
Oh
then
yeah,
I'll
go ahead.
answer that. I have a different client who her uncomfortable phone call is calling the IRS.
Oh,
And she was planning to do that in this past week. And in her particular case, she hadn't paid taxes for a few years. So it was going to be a large bill, and she didn't know what that bill was. And so the
uh-huh.
phone call was to ask, how much do I owe you? And
Yeah.
you can imagine, like, that's an uncomfortable
Yeah, because now
thing to find out,
you're giving your information to now validate who you are, where you are, where,
right?
like, now everything's gonna come. Now they're gonna do their research, and now you're gonna be like, okay, this, let me call you back, let me give you a total, or oh, someone's gonna pick you up and you're gonna go to jail because this is an outrageous amount.
Right.
That is scary. That is absolutely scary. So did she do it, or did you haven't heard yet?
She was planning to when we talked last, and we'll see this week if she did. And
Okay.
what I find is that whenever we find out, like in this case, when she makes that phone call and finds out whatever that number is, even if it's a large number that is scary and intimidating, she doesn't know how she's going to do it. Uh, I find people are always happier on the other side. They're relieved. Okay, it's like now it goes from this like vague, shapeless, threatening kind of thing to like, okay, here's this number. Now even if it's a big number, it's a concrete problem that in her case that she can tackle, that she can get a payment plan or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's always easier when it's concrete and specific rather than this vague thing.
Yeah.
And also, I think there's just something about being courageous that that gives us a bit of power and strength and pride in ourselves. Like I did a hard thing. I think that really matters.
No, I agree. I think that is very valid, very valid. You get your power back because you feel defeated before doing the action, the call, or whatever the case may be to handle your finances. And then
Mhm.
once you're done, it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I did pretty good. It's like you kind of
Right,
like stretch your stuff,
right,
like,
right,
oh
right.
yeah, I can do anything.
Exactly. Right,
But in
right.
reality, it's like you just made one call. That's all you did. But it's okay as
Mhm.
long as you put your pants on and you did it. Good job. But yeah, I think that's a valid point, because sometimes these companies, all they really want is just some acknowledgement. You know what I mean? And the fact that you said it was vague and just distant, just ominous. You know what I mean? You don't know
Yeah.
really what to expect from it. But then when you take that initiative, they realize, okay, wow, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that this is something that you need to take care of and that you're willing to take care of it. Even if it's just a little bit a month or whatever it may be, I will accept it because you're willing to work with me. And I've seen that
Mhm.
a lot of companies are actually willing to do that. Like, okay, your bill is $3,000, but I'm willing to do a $25 a month plan. You know, okay, that
Right.
$25 a month makes you feel good. And then if you have extra funds, it's like, you know what, I'm gonna throw more. And so it motivates you if you go low and then instead of going high, because if you go $3,000, okay, well that means I have to put 250 or
Right.
300 or 400 a month. Ugh, that's choke you, But if you go realistic and go something small, because $25 you spend that on a jacket, you spend that
Mhm.
on food, like nowadays. So it's like if you could spend that on a bill, then at least that takes away that worm in your mind telling you, oh. But
Right.
that's
Exactly.
that, that that's a good point. That's a good point. So I guess what's some lasting words of wisdom that you can leave us off with so we can
Mhm.
wrap up the show?
Yeah. Well, we're here to think about avoidance, and I think my final words are it's once you get into contact with the scary thing and in contact with a friend or a partner or whomever, it always becomes less scary. Sometimes it becomes a little more real, like it's like I should deal with this, and then it's like, okay, I'm actually going to deal with this.
Yeah.
So it can be even a little scarier briefly, but always worth it. Always worth it. Just and yeah, and then we're more proud of ourselves.
There you go. Yeah. See, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That wasn't so hard. You took the first step by listening to this
Yeah.
conversation. Now, hopefully, this gives you the energy and motivation to just go out there and make that phone call because I know I'm going to. I put it on my list.
Okay.
I'm
Okay,
going to
great.
call Spectrum.
Wonderful.
And if anybody out in the audience would like to know more about Adam and all that he has to offer the world, well, I have his photo on my website. You just click right under there and you have all the access that Adam has to give so that you can keep on thinking. So, with that being said, bye.